clarity of mind is just, again, that capacity that we have 100% of the time, even if it goes unnoticed or becomes impotent from ignorance or disuse, lack of use. Just the ability to recognize that thoughts are producing a narrative, and to let go of the fixation of attention on those thoughts, which is usually fueled by basically being convinced that the content of the thoughts, the story that they're telling, is true enough that your nervous system needs to respond to it in an animal way, in an emotional way, or even in a mental way, to think more thoughts about the thoughts, which I think just happens anyway, because it's just kind of what they do, right? But anyway, so there's like this whole matrix of mental activity, everything that it implies, that it proposes, that it advertises, and then the activity of belief and emotional gravity that we give it, and the fixation of attention on it. And these three things kind of fuel each other until it can be recognized that there's another option, which is to just let attention relax back into the indescribable reality that is the only thing that is. And that clarity is precious. And if for no other reason than to just have the freedom that comes with there always being an available alternative to fixating on thoughts and experiencing the way that our nervous systems activate as we employ the appendage, the psychological or energetic appendage that we call belief, which then does what it does, which can be very distracting, difficult, destructive, misleading, distorting, all of these things, right? How are people controlled? Narrative, belief, mind games. Well, with all of the mind games going on that nobody seems to be really winning, just caught up in this endless back and forth. Imagine if you had the option to opt out at any time of the mind game of the moment. It doesn't mean you can opt out of the experience of the moment necessarily, but you definitely can't in the way that would best serve if you find yourself unable to opt out of the mind game. Because even if the experience ends, you can carry that with you in your head. Or, well, and even if you believe you're not carrying it with you because you're thinking of something else, who's to say that what you're thinking of wasn't so influenced by that event? And that's kind of the nature of thoughts, is they are the product of all of our experiences. And so in that way, they kind of always do carry all of our past with them, because that's just our mental programming. And it's interesting because you can be say you're really big into self-reprogramming, personal development, right? There's this character that you call myself, my name, and this character has this past and this history and these preferences and ambitions, and that's why I express the way I express, because I have this story, and I have decided that it's me with such conviction that the story dying is as significant as me being annihilated from existence. And so with that sense of identification attachment with the story of who I am and what has happened to me and what I've done, and then again going back to this idea of self-improvement, what are we improving, right? We're improving the story and our ability to harmonize with the emotions and expressions and everything that comes as a product of us merging with that story, whatever it is that we are prior to stories, words, ideas, beliefs, because that's there, whether or not the rest of the stuff is, right? And even that improvement is done ultimately in reaction to everything prior to it, as an absorption of everything around it. And so it is taking everything that is no longer a part of my present reality, and it's merging it with all of these things outside of what I am, and saying, this is me now. I made these comparisons, these judgment calls, and I have transformed the idea of myself that I'm investing my sense of belief and really like identification of the source of my life force, my consciousness and awareness and capacity for being, into this thing. And I'm not saying that it's not good. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It's something that we can do, and so a lot of us do it. And cool. And there's also just this ability to see more or less like what's going on. And this is what I see and how I describe it. And it doesn't mean that I know what I'm talking about or that I'm right, but just to share, I guess, what's coming up as I record this video. So cool, like that's something that we can do, and we get caught up in very easily. And if you're like me, it has become important to explore that other option of not playing that game, at least not chronically playing that game, at least not depending on the constant activation of that game, and then sort of getting lost in the matrix that it creates inside of our minds of like, this is my story, this is who I am, this is what it's all about, when the reality is it's like this little bubble that we construct and try to maintain inside of this vast, infinite, unnameable, unknowing mystery. And getting lost in that bubble kind of puts us inside of it, and then our world sort of becomes as big as the idea of our world. And some people are really good at it, and it works really well for them, and so it's not limiting, because they've maybe even also made a really good expansive bubble. And I think in some instances it just is, it can only be limiting. And you know, the reality is we're never inside of it. It's inside of us. There's not really such thing as an inside or outside. There's just reality. And as a part of reality, there are thoughts happening that have commentary about reality that feels meaningful, because our nervous system is able to associate those mental noises with stored experiences to create micro reactions to those electrical patterns that make them in some way feel like the experiences they're associated with, so we're able to catalog them in a way that makes sense to us based on our experiences and relate them to the present moment in a way that feels coherent. It's crazy. It's amazing that we can do that, and it's also batshit to me that happens and we have no idea, nowhere close to an idea of how it's possible that happens, that it came to be. It's so complex. We can't even scratch the surface of comprehending how complex it is, what's going on, and then what it accomplishes in terms of the experience that we have is just, it's beyond magic. It's just impossible. Once I ate 10 grams of mushrooms, and I wanted it to be like the full thing, and so I put it in a smoothie, lemon juice, everything I could think of to enhance the potency, the absorption, my own cognition and nutrient intake to support everything going on, and then headphones, eye mask, laid down. I was ready to see aliens or whatever. I had done up to 5 or 6 grams in the past, and so I felt pretty like well equipped to experience the big dose. But it was so interesting because I laid there for maybe an hour or two and did not, like, I could feel the like energetic come up feelings of mushrooms, but it didn't feel super strong. And then I took the eye masks off and I could see kind of the way that it changes my visual field, and it still was like, okay, I'm definitely on mushrooms, but it doesn't feel like what I expected 10 grams to feel like, until I got into sort of a contemplative mode of just comprehending reality and my own thoughts and seeing them from a really, I guess I would say, like deep meta awareness way of digesting what was going on. And I got in this very interesting loop where everything that I considered, every thought, every idea, every piece of logic, math, all of it was paired with the undeniable epiphany, realization, sense of absolute certainty, clarity. I'm seeing it, it's obvious, this is the truth. Everything is impossible. It's all not possible. It's not possible that reality exists. And that was just my experience for the next several hours. It was so mind-blowing. Like, what do you do with that? I guess it's hard to communicate, the gravity, the significance of feeling that and seeming to realize that over and over and over again. But it was astounding. And later on, as I thought back to that, because it's like, okay, sure, it's all impossible, but here it is being. And I think I was kind of reaching my brain's limit of processing and decoding anything, and I was getting a direct experience of the edge of at least my human intelligence, even at what felt like its maximum capacity to take in data and put it all together. It just kept realizing, like, it's all beyond me. It cannot be understood. And so the only understanding that is able to happen is that what is being seen shouldn't be able to be. And so I guess it's impossible for me to understand anything. And I feel pretty confident in saying I absolutely learned that to be a fact. Which is liberating in a way, because the arrival at a final truth can't happen. Not because there isn't the truth, it's just too big. It's too the device of measurement, the ruler that you would need to measure the length of reality is infinite. And in the same way, the capacity to process reality, to understand the fundamental truth of reality, that would need to be an infinite measurement capacity. And because of that being infinite, you would never be able to state what the answer is, because whatever is said is a measurement made by a literary, linguistic, verbal device, which is inherently limited unless it just exposes itself as inadequate by saying, I can't. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. It's impossible. I know that I know nothing. All these different ways of both saying it while also invalidating the words themselves, and in that way knowledge itself, just pointing out the limitations in it to try to not capture it in words, but just represent it appropriately. The irrepresentability of what is. And again, nothing wrong or destructive with words, as long as you're not getting caught up in believing in words as more than what they are, which are categorization triggers for us to associate meaning and accrued experience with how we relate to what's happening around us based on an arbitrary, made up, pliable, optional narrative, identity, perspective. So, it's like the difference between being a pilgrim on a pilgrimage. You must reach the holy site, or else whatever good thing isn't going to happen and bad thing is going to happen maybe, and you've got one shot, to being an eternal explorer and everything that implies. You get to go everywhere, you get to experience everything. There's no rush. It doesn't matter if you do rush. You can't get it wrong, because there's no such thing as getting it right, because everything is relative. You get to be the ultimate authority of everything in your experience, including, and as a result of that, rather, you have the option to let other sources act as your authority, but you're giving them that authority. So, you can't escape it, but you can choose into that experience of not being what you are.